As a furniture and cabinet maker that I apprenticed from the time I was very young. I was about 18 years old, and without boring you with all the details, an economic downturn facilitated a return back to university, which was, ultimately a very beneficial thing, and it's been a very enriching experience that I've had. And I've had the opportunity to meet gentlemen such as Mr. Tucker here and Sergio Gomez and others. But throughout that experience, essentially my work, or at least my selection of materials, has, my crafts history or craft background has helped inform some of that selection of materials. And then, coupled with, an actual fine arts, a formalist education and academic education in fine arts, that gives you the, if you will, the tools necessary to appropriate or reappropriate those materials in a new iteration in an actual fine arts perspective. So, this work is really, I guess one might accuse me rather almost, if you will, in a postmodernist sense of being a formalist, which I suppose that in many respects I actually am. I'm interested in the formal elements that I've brought together. The materials are all chosen for a reason, and really that reason for me is as an artist, I'm interested in juxtaposing materials. I'm also interested in, if you will, an amalgam of materials and bringing those materials together to experience. So I'm very much a kind of a, I suppose a physical artist that way. I like bringing materials together and seeing visually, optically what happens with those. So kind of gives you, everything is non-representational, of course, and contemporary. So it's kind of what I do.
Uh-huh. Now, do you find that you tend to respond more to whatever materials you're working with, try to figure out the specifics of them and maybe push it to its limit, or work within kind of a something more conventional?
Yeah, well, that's an excellent question. And in fact, I think in terms of, you'll see that I use concrete throughout my work, and I think concrete as a material, you can be as either rigid or loose with it as you can. And I think also being completely candid, I'm really still just finding out what concrete is actually capable of. I do have some works that are not in this collection that are far more free-flowing in terms of their forms and the application of the concrete, really using it as paint. But I think that the next iteration of those forms you'll find in the paper and concrete form. So, one form or iteration kind of, is a riff on the next. Mm-hmm. So, but I think I'm really just beginning with the concrete and also with the Shoshugi bond.
Yeah, can you talk about what that is?
Oh, sure. Well, the Shoshugi bond pieces, you'll notice, are the paintings. And perhaps from a distance, unless one were informed as to what Shoshugi is, they might, again, these are experiential pieces. They're really about, one of the things they're about is surface and how that relates optically to the viewer's eye. But the Shoshugi is a 300-plus-year-old process that the Japanese employed to render wood more resistant to rot, resistant to pestilence, resistant to fire, even though I'm actually working with fire to manipulate the surface of these paintings. As a byproduct of that, I've created charcoal, essentially, which is actually very tough to catch on fire. So the Japanese were using that for their building materials as fireproofing. I believe there were a couple of other cultures in Scandinavia that also used a similar process. But I like what they do optically because one may not immediately presuppose that it's actually wood that you're even looking at. It may from a distance look like paint, so I want to kind of play with that idea of painting.
Yeah, I was going to ask you why you refer to them more than once now as paintings.
Yes.
They aren't literally paintings. Do you see them more as like in a dialogue with painting? Like you think about painting when you're making them, despite the fact that there isn't any paint on them?
Right. Actually, I am. I view them as paintings. The orientation in terms of, they're two-dimensional. They're presented on the wall. They are kind of in that canon of painting. But I do actually view them as paintings and presented as paintings.
For those of you not in class, please feel free to...
No, I'm Chicago area. Yeah, I am. What's that? Don't tell me the water.
So you're out of the office, what's going on?
Stretching my legs. I saw that there was an exhibit upstairs, I guess.
Oh yeah, that guy is one, little small baby. There's a photography one, and then there's,
And then I saw the signs that says reception 12:30. I'll go down and listen to the artists and kind of get into their head and see what's going on. It's a really interesting material.
yeah.
Material that they use to actually do actual.
Oh, you mean?
She's for casting.
And this one, I just love.
Right, that's what I'm saying. It just left on its own. This technique, they were inside the tiny house movement, tiny houses, and they are using that Japanese charring technique because it preserves the wood. It lasts a lot longer. So the students went back to good to learn that technique because it's becoming.